Hello family, welcome back. So, we're reading the Pocket Buddha, and we're in the section that says contemplation. Hearing the above, another questioner, Jakukani, asked, like the sun which controls the world with its heat and light, you, Master, seem to control desire and pleasure. I have only a little understanding. How can I find and know the way to give up this world of birth and aging? The Buddha answered, lose your greed for pleasure. Wow, lose your greed for pleasure. Think about that. Greed and pleasure, right? So this overarching compulsion to simply seek worldly satisfaction, pleasure. This is interesting. See how letting go of the world brings deep tranquility. I'm starting to realize this more and more. Truly, there is nothing you need hold on to, and nothing you need to push away. I don't know about the pushing away part. I think there's a lot of things you need to push away, but that's my view. Live in the present, but do not cling to it, and then you can go from place to place in peace. There is a state of greed that enters and dominates the individual. But when that greed has gone, it is like poison leaving a body, and death will have no more terror for you. A student asked, for all the different people who have come to listen to your words, please tell us about the way you have found and known. The Buddha answered, when you take things, it is because of a thirst, a clinging, and a grasping. You should lose that and lose it altogether. Above, below, around, and within, it makes no difference what it is you are grasping. When you grasp, you are losing your freedom. Interesting, look how he says that. You become enslaved to your grasping. So if you truly desire to be mentally free, you should try to let loose of that. True, a lot of wisdom. Realize this and grasp at nothing. Then you will cease being a creature of attachment, tied to the power of death. Sutta Nipata. Hearing the above, another questioner, Upashiva, asked the Buddha, it is not possible for me to cross that great ocean of desire without help. Please tell me what things would help me to find my way across. The Buddha told him, there are two things you can use to help you cross. One is the perception that emptiness exists, and the other is awareness, that in fact all things are empty and wonderful. Great teachers said, Upashiva, when one is free from attachment and craving, when everything is let go and one depends on emptiness, will one be permanently in that state? When you are free from craving for sense pleasures, and when you are aware of emptiness, you are free in a supreme way, and that will not change. It is like a flame struck by a gust of wind. In a flash, the flame has gone out. Similarly, the person is suddenly free, and no more words can be said. When all the ways of being a self are let go, notice this, when all the ways of a being of self are let go. So what are the ways of being? We must ask, right? And when all phenomena are seen to be empty, then all the ways of describing this have also vanished. Sutta Nipata. Meditate on that which is beyond words and symbols. Look at that. Meditate on that which is beyond words and symbols. What a beautiful phrase, truly. Forsake the demands of the self. Forsake the demands of the self. By such forsaking, you will live serenely. Sutta Nipata. The next section is titled Sorrow. Is suffering brought about by myself alone, good Buddha? Asked Kaspa. No, Kaspa. Then by another? No, Kaspa. Then both together, myself and another? No, Kaspa. Then it is brought about by chance? No, Kaspa. Then is there no suffering? No, Kaspa. It is not that there is no suffering, for there is suffering. Well then, perhaps you neither know nor see it, Buddha. It is not that I don't know suffering, or don't see it. I know it well and see it. But to all my questions, good Buddha, you have answered no, and yet you say you know suffering and see it. Please teach me about it. Kassapa, there are two wrong views. One says that oneself is in the entire author of a deed, and all the consequent suffering one brings upon oneself is this so from the beginning of time. The other says that it is deeds by other people that bring about one's own suffering. You should avoid both these views, Kassapa. Here we teach another way. All deeds, whether your own or another's, are conditioned by ignorance, and that is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Interesting, so he's contending that ignorance and suffering are deeply linked. By ending that ignorance in yourself and by way of yourself in others, wisdom comes into being and the suffering ceases. Samyutta Nikaya. Wow. So that basically means, our goal, if we truly want to have less suffering in our life, we need to become less ignorant. Beautiful. In a gabbled house, the rafters all converge on the ridgepole. They are fixed on the ridgepole and joined together there equally, in the same way. Whatever wrong states mind exist, they are all rooted in ignorance. Fixed in ignorance and joined together there. Ignorance of good is the cause of wrongdoing. Therefore you must live in mindfulness and train yourself in this. Samyutta Nikaya. So, wow, training ourselves in mindfulness sounds a lot like intention, right? Being aware, thinking about what's going on. Truly beautiful. As a tree with strong, uninjured roots, though cut down, grows up again, so when deep craving is not rooted out, suffering arises again and again. Dhammapara. Look at that. So, the roots of it. So, the deep cravings of roots. So, craving has roots. It kind of feels like that, right? It just goes deeper and deeper and up and into you. This is a very interesting way of looking at suffering. The noble path is the best of all paths. Freedom from craving is the best state, and the one who has eyes to see is the happiest person. The noble path is the way that leads to freedom from delusion. That leads to clarity. The one who sees this path and follows it comes to the end of sorrow. You yourself must make the effort. The awakened only point the way. Those who have entered the path and who meditate free themselves from the bonds of illusions. So essentially here, what we just learned is that meditation is the goal of it. Part of the goal is to rid yourself from illusion. And why? Because illusions bond you, essentially. Everything is changing. It arises and passes away. The one who realizes this is free from sorrow. That's kind of true, because if you just accept, like, okay, this is changing, this is the way it's going to happen, and we stop just fearing change all the time, we can become more liberated. It's a very beautiful thought, isn't it? This is the shining path. To exist is to know suffering. Look at that. To exist is to know suffering. Realize this and be free from suffering. This is the radiant path. There is no separate self to suffer. The one who understands this is free. This is the path of clarity. Dhammapara. Those who are afraid of all the sufferings in the world, and yet who are afraid of death, seek for nirvana. But they do not know that the world and death and nirvana are not to be separated from one another. They imagine that nirvana is to be found through annihilation of the senses, not knowing that the world of senses is already a mirage or a miracle when it is no longer clutched at. Lankavatara Sutra. There is no fire like greed, and no crime like hatred. There is no sorrow like being bound to this world. There is no happiness like freedom. Health is the greatest of blessings. Contentment the best of riches. Trust is the best of relationships. Nirvana is the highest happiness. Having tasted the sweetness of inner solitude and contentment, he who lives by the law of the universe is free from fear and suffering. Lives by the law of the universe. It is joy to see such awakened ones, and to live with them is happiness. Look at that. So to live with people who are awakened, to surround yourself by them, is the goal, essentially. To travel with fools makes the journey long and hard, and is painful as traveling with an enemy. But the company of the wise is as pleasant as meeting with friends. So, essentially what I get from that is that we should seek companions who seek to be wise, right? Letting go of people who just want to be foolish, right? Follow the wise, the intelligent, and the awakened. Follow them as the moon follows the path of the stars. Dhampara. If you want to get rid of your enemy, the true way is to realize that your enemy is delusion. Kigun Sutra. Look at that. The enemy of delusion. Delusion as an enemy. What an interesting way to phrase it, right? This is truly astounding. Subhuti asked the Buddha, in what way things which seem to be solid and separate really exist? The Buddha said, their true essence is free from the illusion of self. The appearance of things and events seeming to be solid and thus separate is the result of ignorance, which projects the idea of individuality on the world. People who believe that all they encounter and all that goes on in their minds is literally and totally true are trying to root themselves in name and form and conventional ideas. And in consequence they suffer. They go along with the false idea that in order to exist at all, a structure must be material. This is false reasoning, blinds them to the transparent, insubstantial, and yet properly functioning nature of all things and processes. Persons who are so blind live within complex sets of religious or worldly ideas and emotions that they believe to be final, established, and therefore real. They project this self-created world onto their ideas. Look at that. They project ideas of the past and future. Self-created world. This self-created world, that reminds me of like in each mind there is sort of this different world, right? And the present moment. They try to crystallize reality into permanent shapes and categories. In this, they veil the path of insight, the spiritual path which reveals the innate clarity, freedom, and radiant transparency of what is. Prajna Paramita. Wow. So projecting the self-created world onto the future, your ideas, the past, or even the present moment is actually something that is not really going to help you remove the veil so that you can get to insight, right? The goal is insight, the path to insight, and if you don't stop projecting, the veil will continue. It's very interesting. Alright, family. I hope that you liked this video, and thanks for watching.